Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Well, welcome to this HIPRA APC webinar that we've been organizing. Thank you all the attendees for attending. I think we have a quite interesting audience. Lots of people subscribe to this, hopefully relevant for you event. We are after these almost 18 months of change of situation in the European Union, where this has been limited as a medicated ingredient. We decided to organize to invite the industry to review the situation in the EU and outside the EU, and see for where do we stand in terms of health situation in the farming and the pig industry, where we stand in terms of solutions and their levels of implications, both in the sanitary and the veterinarian side, as well as the nutritional advice and the nutritional situation. For that, we'll be having a agenda that will start with HIPRA, with Mr. David Jopard presenting the situation of subclinical diseases, subclinical situation that you may not see in the official reports, everything that is not reported officially, that is hitting the performance. And later on we will go to the second speech, which Mr. Nacho Bernal, who is also from HIPRA and the business product manager, who will comment about the period, about the edema vaccine and how this is affecting and how this can help to tackle the situation from the sanitary side, to then get the word over to Mr. Francesco List, who will be talking about nutrition, how the zinc oxide transition from having this tool to not having it can evolve in terms of nutrition, and how which are the best tools and recommendations for that. To then finish in the end, giving the word to Javier Polo, who will be talking about nutritional solutions, about ingredients, and about the management of the nutrition, and which tools are available for the growers, for the feed companies. To then finish talking about the conclusions that we can have of all the speakers. There will be also, for all the audience, there will be a way to make questions. We will leave those questions for the end. If there's time left, we will start answering them. And if not, don't worry, all the questions will be answered by our speakers. All right. Then I will start giving word to Mr. David Jopard. He's the technical manager of swine, the manager of technical swine service at HIPRA, one of the relevant laboratories in the veterinarian industry. He's a long experienced person, having worked in the swine industry and also in HIPRA for I think almost 30 years, right? So I don't think there's anybody better in our current environment that can talk about what's happening on farms, what about monitoring, which tools there are, and how to make good use of them, right? So David, thank you for joining. Thanks everybody for joining, and please stay on the line and have your questions ready.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you for the introduction. Very kind from your side. And hello, everyone, wherever you are connected from, whether this is from Europe or from Asia or South America. So I must say I'm very glad today to be here to share, to introduce you this topic on the importance of monitoring the subclinical edema disease. I think it's a hot topic, which probably not all, I guess most of you are field vets working in the field. And I wonder how many of you are familiar with the subclinical disease. It's something when we look back 8 years ago, when we at HIPRA, we first launched our vaccine against edema disease, we put all the focus on monitoring and controlling the clinical side of edema. But after 8 years, we realized that it's not just about the clinical disease, which is very easy to recognize. There is a big gap on controlling the subclinical disease. Is something which is real. It's there in the farms. And today, my aim, my objective in this seminar is to create this awareness for you, to put the eyes, to pay attention on that, because at HIPRA, we have a diagnostic service, which you probably, most of you are aware, where we keep monitoring farms. And in this diagnostic service, what we are using, for example, by using oral drops, we monitor how many farms are carrying the bacteria which produce the edema disease, which produce the verotoxin. And it's surprisingly because we realize that there is huge amount of farms infected. We estimate is between 60 to 70% of farms are infected, carrying the bacteria. Does not mean that all of them suffers the clinical or the subclinical, but they carry the bacteria. And when we look from these 65% of farms positive, if we look at the graph on the right, from this positivity, as I said, not all of them suffers. We estimate roughly there is about 20–30% of farms which have no issue today with clinical or either subclinical. We estimate, however, that roughly there is 10–15% of these farms which carry the bacteria. They are struggling with the clinical side of the disease. But more important, and this is today's seminar, there is huge amount of farms which are suffering subclinical. And when I say suffering, it means that when we introduce vaccine in these farms, they really notice a clear improvement on the production performance. It's a vast amount of farms, 55%, which if we put in the whole universe of farms in the planet, we estimate is about from 35 to 40% of farms may be suffering subclinical disease. So it's a huge thing. And we want to create through this seminar the awareness on that, on how to monitor and how to detect and how to improve the situation on subclinical or managing the subclinical. And this is the aim of this seminar today. And this subclinical disease, important to say, is not just affecting the farms in Europe, where most of them has already removed the zinc oxide and the antibiotic usage, whether this is colistines or other antibiotics. It's not just applying to that. This also applies in farms where they are using still using zinc oxide, and they are still using colistine or other antibiotics in the weaning age or even at the end of the fattening. Because in this type of farms, we're still using these molecules, zinc oxide antibiotics. When we introduce the vaccine, we have detected the presence of subclinical, observing an improvement on the productive performance. So this is the aim of today's seminar. So being said that, let's start as a definition of edema disease. As we all probably know, is a toxemia. It's a toxemia. The toxin of the E. coli, the verotoxin, is the one causing the problem. And this E. coli, at the end, which mainly, usually, it is an F18, the main fibria, predominant fibria is F18, but sometimes we also found not just F18, also some of these E. colis have F4, but all these type of E. colis have a characteristic that they are able, they carry the gene which codifies for the toxin. And at the end, this E. coli, it makes crazy dysbiosis. And this dysbiosis can be very high or very low. And here, I don't know if you like history, but I love this guy that you may see here on the screen. His name is Paracelsus. I think he's the father of toxicology. He's from medieval times, and this guy likes playing with poisons. And he really states that the dose makes the poison, the dose. So depending how big is the dose concentration, we can get intoxicated or not, or just half intoxicated. So the dose is the key. And this applies for many poisons, but when we look at the edema disease, it applies also to this disease, and particularly to the subclinical. Indeed, in modern times, there are some papers, and here we have one of them, where already they were trying, they make 3 groups of pigs where you can see one of the groups, they injected huge amount of toxin, 500 nanograms of verotoxin, and all the pigs died very fast in less than 24 hours. Another group received much lower quantity, like 50 nanograms, and they also died, but it took longer to die, so the toxin was smaller. And then finally, there was another group where they injected very few amount, 5 nanograms, where they didn't die. And the paper says there was no clinical disease, but clinical. What about the subclinical? And that's the thing. Between 5 and 50, there is a gradient where probably, and is what it explains that we may be struggling from subclinical disease. Yeah. And as I said, this E. coli, but to release this toxin, first must produce a dysbiosis. And here I'd like to introduce the concept of dysbiosis in this graph. Don't panic, I will explain what it's about. It's about the microbiota. They study the microbiota, and we have 3 groups of pigs. The first group of pigs, which is here on the right, what we may see, every bar is a pig, and in every column is the microbiota. You may see here on the right all the different kind of microbes present in the gut of every single pig. The characteristic of all these pigs here on the right, they are lactating pigs, they are drinking milk. So what we see in all of them, without exception, there is huge amount of this blue that when we check is a lactobacillus, which is normal, we all know that. But the story is, the thing is, what happens to our pigs after weaning, which is this is what today we are struggling to reduce all this E. coli proliferation, whether it's to control the edema disease, but also post-weaning diarrhea, etc., etc. And here, when we look what happens to the pigs on the left side, I think we may divide in 2 big groups of pigs. The difference between the 2 groups, as you may see, if we pay attention to the group in the middle, what we see, there is a huge amount of yellow proliferation, microbiota yellow, which at the end refers to E. coli. So there is a clear dysbiosis of E. coli. However, these are pigs right after weaning. And the same with this other group of pigs on the left. These are pigs right after weaning. However, the difference between these two groups of piglets is the treatment of antibiotics, or the treatment. We may see in this line here on the bottom, which is plenty of different colors, is the kind of treatment pigs receive it right after weaning. The group in the middle, that there is this clear dysbiosis on E. coli dysbiosis, we see is blue, and blue stays for piglets that didn't receive, as you may see here, was the control group, did not receive any kind of zinc oxide or medication. However, in contrary, most of pigs on the left, we see most of them receive whether orange treatment, which stays for zinc oxide, or purple. We may see that stays from antibiotic. So we all know that antibiotics, cholestins, etc., and zinc oxide really helps to moderate, control this dysbiosis. We know that, and the thing is how to produce pigs, but now today, without these treatments. But at the end, it's about managing the dysbiosis. And when we have a dysbiosis, as Paracelsus said, this dysbiosis can be very big or small. But when there is a dysbiosis, there is E. coli proliferation, if we are talking about edema, and this E. coli that produce the toxin, verotoxin, will start releasing this toxin, and the toxin is going to be absorbed by the gut and will cross the enterocytes and reach the capillaries. And it's going to create this vascular damage. And that's the thing, and this is what is important, because the amount of toxin is what is going to create the difference in terms of the clinical disease. When the dysbiosis is big or big enough, the concentration of toxin being released will be high, and then we'll observe the clinical disease, which I guess most of us here today has experienced cases of edema, clinical. No need to go through the clinical signs, whether these are nervous clinical signs in the best piglets. The typical, we may see the typical swollen of the eyelids, or the mesocolon edema, the gut, plenty of food, etc. I'm sure we all experience this. And also, I like this video. I remove the silence, but what is nice to see here in this video is that those pigs are in the fattening, are not in nursery. On the 80s and 90s, we mainly observed the clinical disease in nursery. But today, we observe a lot of clinical disease, not just in nursery, but also in fatteners, where all these piglets are showing trembling. So That is the clinical. But what about the subclinical? And here I like this joke. It's a kind of joke, what you see in the screen, but it's a real thing. You know, at the end, sometimes we as a vets managing farms, since we have not detected the bacteria in the farm or just very low presence, our pigs are growing quite nice. We think that we are not struggling with edema because we have no clinical disease. However, underwater, we can be losing a lot of money because this release of toxin at subclinical level is damaging the pig and is creating a kind of malabsorption syndrome, I like to call it, which at the end is piglet. It's growing much less, and not just that, about the growth, which is super important, but also, we will see in a bit, also increased amount of antibiotic consumption can be increased, and not just that, but we see also an increase of E. coli post-weaning diarrheas in these farms, and in some other farms, I'm going to talk about that in a bit, also streptococcus and salmonella. So the subclinical edema disease facilitates the growth of other enterobacteria which are in the gut, and altogether may be provoking quite a big damage in the farm. And as I said, it's in a subclinical way. So it's very important to control this gut integrity, because controlling the gut integrity, we may improve the health of these pigs. I'm going to develop this idea in a bit. So at the end, just a summary of this first part introduction, is about the dose, as my good friend Paracelsus said. Depending on the dose, we may be suffering subclinical, but as I said, this level of subclinical may depend from farm to farm. Some farms can be very minor level of a very low importance, or can be already a moderate subclinical, or quite big, the level of losers, let's say, or in performance, you know. And of course, at the end, there is a moment, a threshold, where at the end, the amount of toxin being released is high enough that the clinical signs become evident. Yeah. So this is the concept of subclinical. When talking about subclinical disease, I put this sentence, which the window of time the pigs are showing the edema disease has changed. And here I would like just to summarize retrospectively, and probably most of you, the ones who licensed, you get your degree diploma at university on the 70s or 80s or early 90s. On the 80s and the 90s, we observed the major problems of clinical edema disease, clinical, not subclinical, was in nursery units. And mainly that was probably in most of farms, because at that time, the level of hygiene of the water was very poor. Very few farms were chlorinating as a route in the water. Then we learned that by chlorinating the water, we improve a lot the situation. Plus, we start using zinc oxides, etc. So there was a period between the 90s and 2000 until we have forbidden the zinc oxides and colistines, where there was a period in the middle where there was no more clinical disease. We were all happy, but probably, and this is one of the messages, probably we were wrong. Our knowledge on the subclinical was not as good as today, and probably we had farms struggling with subclinical, but we were not paying attention to that. And what it has changed today is that we could not discover, because it has been there, but we are paying much more attention to the subclinical, and we realize it's provoking a big damage. And the subclinical today, and the clinical, we have cases in nursery, of course, cases of clinical disease, but also clinical, as I show you in the video, in the fattening. But the subclinical disease affects a lot of pigs in the fatteners, and fattening pigs are very expensive animals, so that's why it's important. I like to introduce, explain this concept that the age of disease has changed 3 groups of farms, which is the reality in Europe, or summarize the type of farms in the planet. The first type of farm is could be a European farm, where here we have our piglets that right after weaning at 3 or 4 weeks of age, the piglets, they are consuming pre-starter feed, but without zero zinc oxide, colistin, etc., no antibiotics. And in this type of farms, we may express the clinical disease right after weaning many times, normal. But these farms, some of them, or many of them, as I said, are struggling with subclinical disease, which affects mainly nursery, but also, as you may see, in the fattening. As I said, there are other type of farms that as you see in gray, represents they are medicating pigs with zinc oxides or colistin at the entrance of the weaning period for some weeks. And right after they remove it, starts the clinical signs, but also the subclinical are susceptible. As soon as they remove, they are susceptible to suffer some subclinical disease. Even the third type of farms, where we have farms where pigs still gets treated constantly through the whole period of weaning, even at the entrance of the fattening, after they remove, they may be suffering some clinical. Usually we don't observe that as much, but very important, the subclinical. So we have observed in the three types of farms the subclinical form of the disease. As I said before, the verotoxin, the damage the verotoxin produces, facilitates the growth not just or facilitates the growth of the other bacteria, facultative and anaerobic bacteria like Streptococcus, of course, E. coli, and Salmonella. And this is a very interesting concept because facultative anaerobic bacteria, they love oxygen like us, that's normal. And when we have this vascular damage, I like this picture. Here represents, so you may see the villi, and these are all the vascular red net of capillars. So every enterocyte is in contact with the capillary in order to exchange the oxygen. So when there is a damage of the vascular system, there is more release of oxygen in the other side. So the bacteria have more access to oxygen. And that helps to explain, for example, we have observed in many farms where we introduce the vaccine against edema, we observe not just an improvement on controlling the edema disease, whether this was clinical or subclinical, but also we improve, in many farms, they reported good experiences on reducing or improving the control of post-weaning diarrhea. This maybe applies for E. coli, but also for Salmonella. And in the case of Salmonella, especially cholera suis, which provokes septicemia, since the integrity of the gut is better, it's more difficult to provoke, if we control the gut integrity, it's more difficult for cholera suis to provoke this septicemia. So there are many reports from fields from the vets, reporting an improvement of post-weaning diarrhea. In other farms, there is no improvement at all because this post-weaning diarrhea is due to other things. But we have seen that, and this is important to bear in mind. In the same way, happens with the Streptococcus. A Streptococcus, and here it's probably one of the main diseases provoking headaches in the vets, like together with PRS. But the Streptococcus, I think when pigs suffer from Streptococcus, there are three major sources or explanation why the piglet suffers a Streptococcus. And if we are able to control this, the three sources of a Streptococcus will be able to have a better management of the disease. From one side, I'm sure we all know how important the piglets, when they are born, get infected from the mother. And then the piglets gets colonized in the tonsils, the Streptococcus. And when this piglet, we apply a stress, which usually typically is at weaning, and if these piglets already have no colostrum, then the Streptococcus, the Streptococcus. So the first source of infection is this Streptococcus colonizing the tonsils. Then there is a second source of infection that we all learn, which is the environmental contamination of a Streptococcus. We have piglets that pick up from the mothers, from the skin of the mothers, and the piglets carry this bacteria on the skin. And any injury or wound or lesion we provoke to the piglet's skin may facilitate the entrance, the septicemia of a Streptococcus, or even when we use needles, the iatrogenic infection. So by improving hygiene, etc., we know how important, how key is that to control this second source of infection. But finally, there is a third source of infection, which probably we are not paying enough attention, which is this Streptococcus, which is on the environment the piglets pick up orally, and this Streptococcus goes into the gut. And in the gut, if the gut health, the integrity of this gut is not good enough, and there is vascular damage, also this oxygen will facilitate the proliferation of a strepto and will facilitate the septicemia of a Streptococcus. So anything we do to improve the gut, the integrity of the gut, will be in favor of controlling the strepto. And this is a very interesting concept, which until now we have not been managing good enough, I will say, and there is a big area of improvement. So my message for you, one of the messages for me today is, you should, as a vet work in the field, we should be able to monitor every single farm we have. We should check what type of farm we have in order to classify. And you will agree with me that probably there could be 4 main types of farms when we check for the presence of the bacteria, whether do we have the bacteria that provokes edema disease. This is verotoxigenic E. coli. Do we have it or not in our farms? Of course, there is a certain amount of farms, like 30–40% of farms, which don't carry the bacteria. They are lucky, good. But there is huge proportion of farms that they carry, which are the red ones. And within the red ones, the ones which carry, as I said, there are 2 types of farms which needs a direct intervention, which are the farms which are struggling with acute disease or clinical disease. Normal, we need to do something here. But also those farms which are subclinical. But as I said, the subclinical, we don't see the subclinical. So how to manage that? How to check if we have subclinical? So I'll be talking about that. And then there are other type of farm which today they really have no problems of clinical and subclinical. But this is today. But as I said, this E. coli provoking edema at the end is about a dysbiosis, suffering or not a dysbiosis. So today we have no dysbiosis, good, but maybe tomorrow we might have. So it's important to keep routine monitoring about the presence of this E. coli in the farm. We are monitoring at HIPRA, we are providing this diagnostic service where we provide the pack. It's about using ROPS mainly to collect the fluids. And once we collect the fluids, we are using FTA cars where we put the fluid that we have collected from the ROPS. And we perform these FTA cars. We provide everything. Also, we provide the envelope. We let it dry, and we provide the envelope to send to the lab. Here you may see better pictures how it is. Once we provide the micropaper to sit the FTA car. We sit it twice, and then very important, we let it dry 1 hour, and once this is ready, it's dry, we post it. And we send to the lab, and we perform PCR to detect for the presence of the gene that codify for the verotoxin. And if it's positive, then we must care. We must wonder, what type of farm do I have? I'm suffering subclinical or not? Yes. And to do that, well, the first question many times vet ask us when to sample, when to put the ROPS. And I think the ROPS, there are 2 big types of strategies. One side is any farm suffering from clinical disease. Putting the ROPS is easy. I think there are 2 sampling points or ages. One is in the middle of the outbreak. And here, never mind if the farm is without medication or with medication at the entrance of the nursery or during the whole period. As far as there is the outbreak, we put the ROPS, 2 or 3 ROPS in the middle of the outbreak in different pens, and also another group 1 week before the outbreak. So this is how we do for the clinical. That is simple. But what about subclinical? Subclinical is a bit different, and we need to put more ROPS if we want to have a better estimation. The 3 types of scenarios, what is very important, as you see, is also to sample the finishers, the growers. So usually we place like 4 ROPS, or 4 groups of ROPS, 4 ages at least. One is about, the first type of farm, as you may see, is 1 or 2 weeks after the moving into the nursery unit. Then another group before moving into the fattening. So in some farms, they are moving to the fattening at 8 weeks of age, other at 9, other at 11, but 1 week before moving to the fattening. And then once they have been moved to the fattening, and especially after changing diet, then we put another ROP. So usually it's 2 or 3 weeks after entering to the fattening unit. And very important, if there is a dysbiosis, but it's a subclinical, we want to see. So that's why we sample again 3 or 4 weeks later. And we do the same for the 3 scenarios. And then how to interpret results. And this is also very interesting, how to interpret. So we send the FTA cars to the lab. We perform the PCR. And here, to illustrate, I just put 2 examples on that. The PCR, the way we provide results is semi-quantitative. So instead of working on the CT, what we provide is plus crosses. One cross, like this result here, you may see, one cross or two crosses or three crosses. When it's three crosses, the amount of bacteria of genome detected is much higher, you know. So this is how we provide. So what you may see here on the right, the vet from this farm, he sent 3 ropes from from piglets of, so sorry because it's in Spanish, but at 7 weeks of age, and another set of 3 ropes at 9 weeks of age. These results, where we see a lot of positivity and a lot of 3 pluses, refers to a clinical case. But the one on the left, and this is what is different, in this case, the vet sends 2 ropes from piglets at 6 weeks of age, this one, that they were slightly positive. Then you see 2 groups were negative at 9 weeks of age, and another was only 1 plus positive at 9 weeks. This is a farm with subclinical disease. So the subclinical disease, we have the bacteria, we detected the presence of bacteria, but it's not huge quantities of gene detected, but it's there. And in this case, it applies for a subclinical. And then also what happens in some farms, as you may see here, the vet samples pigs in nursery, which are the results on the left, at 5 weeks, 6, 7, 8, and 9, and all samples, all ropes were negative at that age. However, later on, as pigs were moved into the fattening, you see there was positivity. This positivity was not super high, but it was positive. And this is what we see in many farms with subclinical disease, this level of positivity. And once we have the results, the big question, the million-dollar question is, okay, I have the presence of the bacteria, but do I suffer subclinical or not? And the only way, and I'm sorry to tell you that, but it's the only way to make a proper diagnostic is to introduce the vaccine. There is no other way to ensure or to predict whether you have subclinical. We may predict, help you to, if there is the bacteria present in the farm, but once bacteria is present, the only way to predict is by introducing the vaccine, to make a trial and error. You know, so we will start vaccinating several batches of pigs. Usually we advise to make the whole run in the nursery. If you have 6 weeks of ages, 6 batches of pigs in the nursery, so vaccinate all these 6 batches, so it depends how is the length of the nursery. But we vaccinate the nursery, all the nursery, and then we compare results before and after. And this is the only way to really prove if we have subclinical disease or not. And if we really have a subclinical problem, which, as I said, many farms suffer subclinical, results will be extraordinary, are very easy, very brilliant. So it's very easy to recognize because the improvement is very clear. So, and this is about the results, introducing a trial and error. But what happens when I do a test and the results are totally negative, and I do a sampling? As you may see here in this farm, they sample pigs at 50 weeks, at 60 days of age, at 70, 80, 100 days, and the sampling turned out negative. What is it? Is it a farm really negative? Or we just didn't detect, you know? So do I encourage? Sometimes this happens. And I may say that there are 2 types of farms. There are farms that, despite we didn't detect the bacteria is present but at a very low level, but it still creates dysbiosis. And when we introduce vaccine, we see an improvement. If that's the case, we were in front of a subclinical case. But there are other farms, it's true, a minority, not many, where we introduce, as this type of farm negative, where we introduce vaccine and really there is no improvement at all. So there are farms that the bacteria seems is not present, you know. So these type of farms are farms where in the past they were positive. So if we have a farm that historically we detected the bacteria, but now lately the results turn out negative, that does not mean the bacteria is not present. So once we introduce the vaccine and it's not working, what is important to think is that these piglets from time to time might be suffering dysbiosis, you know, the dysbiosis. So my message to you is pay attention, keep monitoring these farms, because from time to time they might be suffering dysbiosis. So as a conclusion, I think there are three basic conclusions of my seminar today. First one, which I've been insisting, check your farm. I think it's mandatory. We need to check. We can make the life of the farmer, the performance of the farmer much more profitable. So we need to understand what type of farm do we have in front of us. And in case that the farm is diagnosed as verotoxin positive, that carries the bacteria, next step is be brave, assessing or introducing the vaccine, make a test and a trial and error essay. That's the second thing, because as I said, it's the only way to diagnose the subclinical disease. And finally, for those farms where in the past were positive, but now the results turns negative, and you introduce the vaccine and there is no subclinical, so the results, no changes, then what is left here is keep monitoring. So be careful, because at the end, it's very hard the E. coli to disappear from the farm. So once it's there, from time to time may pop up, so keep monitoring. And this is it from my side, so thank you very much.
Okay, David, it was a really, really interesting presentation. I think Victor is having some connection problems, so I will just jump into this. We want to continue with the flow of this webinar. So, well, at least from my side, thank you very much. I really found it very, very interesting. And also, it's perfect for the second presentation today, which is directly based on our own experiences vaccinating with our edema disease vaccine, VPure, in cases of subclinical edema disease. So again, thank you everyone to be connected in this afternoon, morning, or night, depending on where you are connected. It's a pleasure to be here sharing with you some of our experiences with our edema disease vaccine with VPure. And it's perfect, the introduction that David has done about the importance of diagnostics in order to check or to evaluate or to see subclinical farms. Because at the end, what does subclinical means? It is something that we are not seeing. So of course, we will need the help of the diagnostics. So the first question I want to address to all of you, and that's why I split my presentation in two parts, is first about a brief introduction on how vaccination can help controlling subclinical edema disease, for then moving to the field experiences. This is the first question I want to share and I want to address to all of you. Is verotoxigenic E. coli present on our farms? Well, trying to address this question, we start and we run a trial focused on Europe that it was presented in the 2022 ZINC Summit, that it was basically a screening of different European farms in terms of the presence of the verotoxigenic E. coli. But we have not stopped there. We have also included to the study more farms all around the world. So what we are going to see now, there is a general perspective of the prevalence of verotoxigenic E. coli farms in the world. As I said, for this study, we take into account more than 3,700 farms worldwide, where we sample more than 19,000 FDA cards, as David already explained, with our VeroCheck kit. Guess what? And David already made a kind of teaser about what I'm going to say. The percentage of verotoxigenic E. coli positive farms over the time is roughly over 60% in all the countries that we tested. You can see, and it's curious to see how from the last 6-7 years, there has been not a big difference or a big variability within the percentage of positivity. This is, of course, if we looked at the situation in Europe, we have seen an increase throughout the past of the years, whereas in other countries, they have been still more stable, basically because those countries thinking on Asia or American countries, they have not still established the politics in reduction of the use of antibiotics or the ban of the zinc oxide. But looking at the percentage and focusing on Europe, we can see how, globally speaking, all countries are moving within this range of 58 to 65% of farms positive farms to verotoxigenic E. coli. Whereas we can see in this example, all farms are, we tested in Russia, most of them, they were still quite low percentage of positivity, probably because still in Russia, you know, there is a huge use of zinc oxide and other antibiotics like colistin. When we look at the perspective globally, we can see that the picture is more or less the same as we saw in Europe. But I'd like to point out the example of China, you know, where we still can see a high prevalence of positive verotoxigenic E. coli farms. And in this case, this is probably linked with the massive use of antibiotics that has been used in those farms, and probably those verotoxigenic E. coli have already created some resistance to those antibiotics. We can see also how in some of the southern Latin American countries where still the use of colistin or zinc oxide is widely used, still the prevalence is quite low. But apart from this, everywhere in the world, we can see this over 60% of positive farms. So addressing the first question, is verotoxigenic E. coli present in our farms? I think the first answer is yes, we can detect it in more than 60% of our farms. And then second is that it's a global distribution. We can find it in the same percentage wherever the region we are. Then after this, it comes the next question, which is, which strategies do I have to fight against verotoxigenic E. coli? Well, first, as you know, and David already explained, is a dysbiosis by the E. coli. So these strategies can affect in the same way for enterotoxigenic E. coli or verotoxigenic E. coli. In this case, our objective will be to reduce the amount of pathogenic E. coli, but also protect against the infection that these toxins are going to produce. In this sense, of course, how to tackle this needs a multifactorial approach. That's why we are doing this seminar. This is not only about one topic, but at least those three big pillars will be fundamental for the control of the verotoxigenic E. coli. That's why our colleagues from APC, they will talk about the different nutrition strategies we have. About management and facilities, it only requires a specific seminar. There is a lot of things in this topic, but what I'm going to focus is on our side, which is the immunity we can provide with vaccines. So in this case, how is the immunity working against the subclinical edema disease? Well, first, we need this verotoxigenic E. coli. This is this oral fecal infection that the pigs are taking this verotoxigenic E. coli. Then the second step, those E. coli, they need to colonize the small bowel, looking for these specific receptors, basically the F18 and the F4. Afterwards, when these verotoxigenic E. coli have found those receptors, they will start the verotoxin production. Of course, these toxins, they are going to be transported onto the general circulation. And at this point is where edema disease vaccines are going to work, because the neutralizing antibodies that the vaccines are going to generate are going to stop and neutralize the toxin. And as a consequence, they are going to avoid the capillary damage, and we are going to have these healthy piglets without edemas, ataxias, or other clinical signs related with the edema disease. What is the vaccine we have at HIPRA to protect against or to generate the immunity against the verotoxigenic E. coli? Is one of our latest and most innovative products, our VPure, which just briefly, probably most of you are quite aware of it. It's a 1 milliliter dose that can be applied from 2 days of life, with protection from the full period, with reduction of all the clinical signs related to edema disease, and what is more important, which is the only vaccine that has the prevention of mortality due to edema disease. This vaccine, compared with other vaccines which are available on the market, it's a purified vaccine, which means that we are going to eliminate other E. coli components and leftovers, and we are going to elute and get exclusively the verotoxin. It allows us to have a more immunogenic vaccine, since we are only having the verotoxin, and in terms of safety, we are going to avoid side effects, especially when we are vaccinating these young animals. Saying that, and linking this to the subclinical edema disease, this is the concept that David has introduced, and this is exactly what we are looking when vaccinating pigs to protect against subclinical edema disease, the intestinal integrity. As much as we can maintain this intestinal integrity, we are going to avoid, of course, not only the primary processes, but the secondary processes that we have seen, like the post-weaning diarrhea, streptosuis problems, ear necrosis, and then the consequences, lack of growth, etc., increase of antibiotics, etc. And again, as David has introduced, this verotoxin effect is totally dose-dependent. So we can have this extremely big amount of toxins, which are farms that are going to develop these clinical signs, but those farms with less amount of toxin are the ones that are going to show up these typical subclinical signs, like low growth, these problems of post-weaning diarrheas, and antibiotic consumption. Good. So at this point, now we are ready to see what are the field experiences we have been gathering now, focusing on vaccination against subclinical edema disease. And I'm going to introduce 3 different cases. The first one is a case focused on the impact that subclinical edema disease can have in growth performance. So I will briefly explain you that was a farm, a European farm, that was included in this study because it doesn't have edema disease clinical signs, it doesn't have mortality due to edema disease, but there was a standard growth. So it was a typical subclinical suspicious farm. Moreover, at this time, there wasn't clinical signs, but it was a farm that in the previous batches was affected by edema disease. What did the vet to get the suspicious that probably this lack of growth could be related with the edema disease? As we have seen, we performed the diagnostics and we saw that we saw an interesting pattern, which is, as you can see here, basically during the nursery, where all animals, let's say, virtually negative, there was only 1 out of 101 animals that was detected as positive, whereas during the fattening period is where we found the big amount of animals positive for verotoxigenic E. coli. So, having identified this farm as a suspicious subclinical edema disease farm, we established the vaccination. So we take 1 batch of animals and we split half without vaccination and the other half with vaccination. And we check for the main KPIs like mortality due to edema disease, clinical signs, and body weight. About the results, I can advance you that we didn't find out differences in mortality or clinical signs, That's why it was subclinical edema disease farm. But looking at the impact in growth performance, we found out with the statistically significant differences that at day 115 and at the slaughter time, there was an increase in 3.2 kilos and 3.8 kilos in the group vaccinated with VPUR compared with the group non-vaccinated. So here we have a clear case of how vaccination against edema disease can improve growth performance in those farms which are identified as subclinical. Now let's going to move to the second case, which is a totally different one, and it's more focused on the impact that subclinical edema disease have in streptosuis positive farms. It's it has been described in bibliography that the co-infections with strepto are quite common, and the relationship that verotoxigenic E. coli can have in these farms. So about this farm, it was also a European farm. It was a farm located in Belgium. It was a clear farm diagnosed by affected by strep suis. There was clinical symptoms like meningitis, but also it was positive, or it was with a positive necropsy and lab culture, and it was a farm without clinical edema disease history. Apart from this, when we performed diagnostics, again, just at the time of moving the animals to the fattening unit, we found out that there were positivity in those samples. So again, that was a candidate farm to perform this study. We separate the animals in 3 groups. One control group non-vaccinated. There was a big amount of animals that were vaccinated with a live oral E. coli vaccine, especially for controlling post-weaning diarrhea. And there was a 3rd group vaccinated with VPUR. In this case, we check for average daily weight gain of the animals and the mortality in the nursery period. What about the results? In terms of average daily weight gain, we didn't find out clear differences between the 3 groups, but in mortality, you can see first, the total mortality in nursery was significantly lower in VPUR group with 2.28% compared with the control group and the group vaccinated with the live oral E. coli vaccine. But what it was more important was when looking at the number of dead animals due to strepto, we also find out that the percentage of animals that were that died due to strep suis was significantly lower in the VPUR group, again, compared with the control group, whereas it wasn't possible to demonstrate by the other vaccine. So in this example, in this farm, we can conclude that, of course, there was a clear relationship in the reduction of the strep suis problems or death when we start to implement the vaccination with VPUR. Of course, when calculating the return on the investment on the VPUR vaccination in that farm, it was much better than the control group and the other vaccine group. Saying that and moving to the end of the presentation, this is the last case, which is, of course, related with another of the hot topics, which is the impact that the subclinical edema disease has in the antibiotic consumption. In this case, it was 850 cell farms. It doesn't have, again, no clinical signs of mortality due to edemas, but when performing, again, the VeroCheck, the PCR for verotoxigenic E. coli, we found out in all the ages that we tested that they were positive. So that's why we wanted to check the consumption, the cost of medication and additives in 2 different periods. First, one period where they were using the regular antibiotic treatments, and a second period where they implement vaccination with VPUR. In this case, about the results, first, here you have the expenses throughout the first period, was the pre-vaccination period, during the transition, and then during the vaccination period. And here on the right, you have the total expenses in antibiotics in feed, injectable antibiotics additive, and then the total. As you can see here, basically focusing on the injectable antibiotics, where we found the higher, the statistical significant differences, which is basically what we are seeing when these subclinical edema disease start to implement vaccination with BPure. As you can see here about the additives, of course, we need to keep using additives because farms which are affected, when we are taking out the antibiotics, we can control the subclinical edema disease, but of course there can be another diseases like post-weaning diarrhea that needs to be controlled with another options like the additives. So as a conclusion, even on a farm without clinical signs of edema, the production costs were statistically significant lower after vaccination, especially because of reduction in the injectable antibiotics. Saying that, and also I would like to add of what David has already explained. Here are my take-home messages, which are clear. First, 6 out of 10 farms worldwide are positive to tuberotoxigenic E. coli and potentially subclinical. The second one is that intestinal integrity is totally linked with the appearance of edema disease. This is the trigger to produce all the symptoms, all the problems which are related with the subclinical edema disease. There is a really nice tool for controlling this, which is vaccination, especially as we have seen in the 3 examples, farms affected with strep suis, with increasing the antibiotic consumption, or with growth retardation. And since we are talking about a subclinical disease, diagnostic is the key for the characterization or identification of those subclinical edema disease farms. And this is the end of my presentation.
Hello. First of all, thanks to HIPRA and thanks to APC to organizing this meeting. I think it's always good to try to combine nutrition and health, because as you will see, part of the solution to take out zinc oxide, but also antibiotics, would be to have a more holistic approach. So we cannot only change the diet, or we cannot only change the vaccine. So probably we need to combine different strategies to be able to be successful. So with my presentation, I would like to share with you what we have done in the let's say 18 months to try to be successful in removing zinc oxide in Europe. So to start with, we are a bit more than a year now. We removed the zinc oxide in June of last year, so we are a bit further than a year. And then if I look back where we are now, I think that in Europe, at least the stop of zinc oxide in most of the farms did not cause the problem that we were expecting before, let's say, stopping the zinc oxide. So I think most of the farms found a solution. Probably we have around 30% of the farms that are still we have some cases of diarrhea that still health is a problem, but I would say compared to the previous situation, so where most of the people were thinking, okay, if we take out zinc oxide, we'll have a lot of problems and it will be the end of the sector. That's not the case, and that means that I can encourage the countries and the other places of the world where still zinc oxide is there to start working on it, because it's possible. What we have done based on the diets is to try to make more safe diets. As you will see, we have tried to go more close to the requirement of the animals to avoid not pushing the animals too much on the nutrient side. But of course, one of the important parts is that we cannot only focus post-weaning and start all the work post-weaning. We need to start already pre-weaning, as you will see with the colostrum, and trying to get really good quality animals, because if we are weaning animals with a higher body weight, probably will have less problems, as you will see that if the animals, they arrive in a lower body weight at weaning. So we need to really take the whole production system to be successful. And as I mentioned, probably the focus is not only post-weaning, so just taking out zinc oxide and doing nothing, we will not, let's say, solve all the problems. We also need to start already working pre-weaning with the right interventions. So we look, as we have seen already before with Nacho and with David, a farm probably is affected by many factors, and at the end, it's, let's say, all the factors together which will determine if a farm has a really good health status or poor health status. So we only, let's say, the age of weaning, antibiotics use are not important. Also, we have seen that, for example, the genetics has been playing an important role. We have seen that some farms where there's some genetics, where the feed intake of the piglets is quite high, for example, we have faced more problems in controlling diarrhea compared to other farms where they use genetics that, for example, the feed intake post-weaning are more limited. So the genetic, also the background of the animals will play an important role. And also, as has been already discussed, we have seen that without zinc oxide, everything is more or less on the limit, let's say. So if you have not good hygiene, or if you have other pathogens around, as we have seen before, then probably we will get much more problems. So at the end, we need an holistic approach to try to be successful. We have tried to do some work in our farm in Lelystad. So we have a farm in Lelystad where we have around 400 sows, topic sows. And here what you see in this graph is the relation between the body weight of the animals at birth, so less than a kilo, up to more than 2 kilos. And here on the right side, you see the link to the body weight at weaning. And you see on yellow, animals that at weaning were more than 9 kilos, and on the opposite side, blue, less than 6 kilos. I must say that to get animal of 9 kilos, we are weaning already at 30 days old. So these are, let's say, not animals wean at 21, 24 days. This is at 30 days old. But what you clearly see is that when we are having animals that at birth are less than a kilo, 40% of them we are already losing, let's say, before weaning. So pre-weaning they die, and then you see that the animals that are born small, they are still small at weaning. And if we go to the other side, when we have really nice animals at birth, more than 1.8 kilos at birth, they remain big also at weaning. We have also seen what happened later on the growing finishing phase on the performance of these animals. So here you see again in blue animals that were born with less than a kilo, and if we go up, we have in yellow animals that were born more than 1.8 kilos. This is the growth in the pre-weaning phase, post-weaning, and growing finishing barn. And you see that more or less the ranking remains. It's true that towards the end, probably the difference becomes smaller, but still it pays off to try to get as many as possible animals with a higher body weight at birth, because this body weight at birth will affect later the performance of the later phases, let's say. And on the opposite side, if we have too many animals with a low birth at body weight at birth, you will have them, let's say, on the lower side also throughout the whole period. So that means, as I mentioned, that we cannot only focus on the post-weaning, we already need to focus what happened in the pre-weaning period. Of course, we could talk already in gestation and what happened afterwards, but my idea was to start already in the lactation unit. And what we have seen in Europe is more and more farms are trying what we call a transition diet. And this transition diet would make the link between gestation and lactation. And the focus of this transition diet, as you will see, is to focus on get good colostrum quality, but also try to get a fast farrowing process, and also try to get influence the microbiota that is on the gut of the sow and will contaminate the piglets, let's say. On the second part of the lactation, still the sows and the piglets are all together. So here we need to focus on making milk for the sow, but also, as you will see, we have some opportunities through the diet to try to get the right bacteria into the feces, and then hopefully these positive bacteria will go on also to the piglets that are born sterile, and then we will try to avoid the negative effects post-weaning. As you will see in the piglets, the focus will be in lactation, trying to increase the feed intake of the crib feed, and post-weaning will be trying to keep them healthy after the 2 weeks, let's say, after weaning. To do so, it's a bit depending on the, as I mentioned, on the genetic that you have in the farm, on the management, on the weaning age, on what are the objectives that you want to achieve. But usually what we say is that the first 24 hours that the animals are born, we need to focus on the colostrum. Then when the animals are growing, let's say as you will see, some of the farms, when you have really big litters, they are using milk replacers to support the piglets and trying to help, especially the smaller ones, to get to a good body weight at weaning. Then we say usually around 7 days of age, we need to start giving some crib feed. And then when we move towards the weaning, and as you see here, in our case, the weaning is 30 days old. At weaning, you have two objectives, two solutions, or you try to use the crib feed and you prolong the crib feed 1 week post-weaning, or you start using the post-weaning diet 1 week before weaning. But what we have seen in the trials that we have done so far is that at weaning, you move the animals and you change the diet. This will create a lot of stress to the animals. So it's better either using the crib feed for the post-weaning period, or starting with, let's say, the post-weaning diet already in the pre-weaning situation. But don't change the diet, keep the same diet before and after weaning. Just to give you some ideas on the role of colostrum. So here, what you see in this graph on the left is the link between the litter size and the colostrum yield, the production, and then you see there's no relation. So unfortunately, with these sows that we get more piglets, high prolific sows, there's not more intake or more production of colostrum. So that means that if you look, so this is the same graph, of course, per liter, the colostrum increase, but if you see the consumption per piglet, when you get more piglet, there's less consumption of colostrum. So we have done a lot of trials trying to increase the production of colostrum, but it's really difficult. So then the main focus for the colostrum will be, I think, in management, try to achieve that all the animals get the right amount of colostrum, and trying to, for example, let first the big ones to drink colostrum, then block them for a couple of hours, let the smaller ones, and so on. But I think the colostrum management is really already important to try to be successful afterwards. What we can do with the diet. So as I mentioned, probably by modifying the diet of the sows, we can have already some good interventions in the piglets. So here what you see in these graphs is the bacteria population in the saliva of the sows, in the feces, or in the vaginal mucus, in the birth canal of the sows. Here you have different colors. Here you see the bacteria population. But if we compare, for example, saliva and feces, we see totally different populations. So probably if we want to modify something with the diet, we could target the bacteria that are in the feces. So here, for example, you see the Clostridium. These two groups are Clostridium. But one of the bacteria that have been mentioned already for the two speakers before is Streptococcus. And you see Streptococcus, we cannot find it in the feces of the sows, and we can find it mainly in the saliva, in the tonsils, or in the birth canal. So probably I totally agree with the previous speakers that without zinc oxide, the Streptococcus is becoming a big problem, especially if we cannot use amoxicillin. So probably we need a different strategy to try to reduce the excretion of a Streptococcus from the sows to the piglets. We have done some work in our farm in Lelystad to try to use different diets to see if we could modify the bacteria population in the sows. So here what you have is two different treatments, so two different diets that we were giving to the sows around farrowing. One that we said that would have a low level of what we call inert carbohydrates, so fiber that is not really fermenting but have an effect on the transit time mainly, and another fiber that we call high in inert carbohydrates. And here what you see is, let's say, the bacteria population for the two groups. So this is again the sows. And then what you see is that depending on the diet, you can modify some of these bacterial groups in the sows. So it seems that there's opportunities through the diet, trying to make a special diet around farrowing to try to get the right bacteria into the piglets, and it seems that the sows, and especially the fermentation, depending on the type of fiber that we give, we could modify the bacteria population that is going to the sows, and then hopefully this will have an impact on the piglets. So if we move on, we have seen what we need to do with the sows in this transition period. Then we move to the piglets, and as I explained, there's different solutions depending on the genetics and also probably depending on the management of each farm. You could start already the 24 hours of life giving what we call an oral supplement, and this could be a booster mainly for energy and for the piglet to try to get the smaller ones some extra energy, but also some warmth, let's say, and trying to keep them alive. So this, I would not say, is not always used in Europe. I have seen more this strategy outside of Europe because probably the labor costs are cheaper. And also I have only seen this strategy in places where they say, okay, we have a lot of animals that are really low body weight at birth, and we want to try to save as much as possible animals in these 24 hours. So let's try to prepare a mixture, and it could be a mixture with glucose that you put also, for example, some minerals, some vitamins to really help the animals that are really small body weight in these 24 hours to see if you can reduce the mortality of these 24 hours. What is a bit more common in Europe is to try to give supplemental milk, especially when you have these big litters. And then the goal when you are giving this milk, let's say in the liters, is to try to increase the body weight at weaning. So as you would see, there's some trials showing that especially when you have more animals than teats, helping with the milk, if the management is good, still you can increase the body weight of at weaning, let's say. And then the next strategy would be the crib feed, solid feed, because at the end, post-weaning, the animals need to go to a solid diet. So as you will see, the strategy would be we need to really treat them, we need to teach them how to eat this diet, and if we can start already pre-weaning with a solid diet or a semi-liquid diet, but should be a similar composition than the diet that will get post-weaning, as you will see, there would be some positive effects, not only because post-weaning the animals will start to eat faster, but also the gastrointestinal tract will be prepared to digest this diet. So it's really important to try to introduce this diet as soon as possible. And as I mentioned, 1 week, let's say, 1 week of life, 7 days old, I think it's a good moment to start. So some example of the oral supplement. So as I mentioned, you need to do it at the first 12 hours of life. Is usually one single dose, can be liquid or a bit more paste. It can be combined with different, let's say, strategies. So not only energy, but also iron, vitamins, immunoglobulins, maybe also some probiotics to get already some positive effects on on these animals. If I look, let's say, how many, what is the successful of this intervention and how many farmers are using this, I would say still in Europe is limited. Still is not clear, let's say, if it's really successful on reducing the mortality in these 12 hours of life. Requires a lot of labor, let's say. So I would say, okay, the idea is good. And probably when you have big litters, it can help, but I would say is not a standard after the removal of zinc oxide that we have starting using this strategy. Another possible solution or a strategy that we could use to try to get the right bacteria into the animals is what we call giving a fecal microbial transplantation. So we are working on an European project that it's about alternatives for veterinary antimicrobials. So this project will run 1 more year. And in this project, what we did is to try this intervention in a way to say the animals are born sterile. Can we make a pool of samples coming from the south, really healthy sows, to try to colonize the gut of the animals as soon as possible, and then trying to have some positive effects. So what we have seen in some of the trials that we have done is that if we are able to select the right sows and then we challenge the animals post-weaning, it seems that the diarrhea was reduced. The biggest bottleneck will be biosecurity. You can imagine that this strategy, maybe some farmers they are using putting some feces of old sows to piglets to try this strategy, but you cannot bring feces from one sow farm to another farm, because this will create a lot of, let's say, biosecurity issues. So still, maybe it can be an interesting strategy. Probably still we need some more work to characterize the donor and what kind of bacteria do we want there, or do we want bacteria or only the filtrate? Because in this project we did one treatment that it was really giving feces, and another treatment that we were filtering all the bacteria and virus and only giving, let's say, the filtrate, and the results were quite similar. So probably it's not only the bacteria, but there's also something more that can have a positive effect. But I would say still we have 1 more year to go, and still I would say also it's not an intervention that we are doing routinely in all the farm. If we move further on the difference or what is, let's say, the benefit of giving supplemental milk versus crib feed. So this is a trial that was done 1 year ago, more or less 2 years ago. And here what they did is to compare crib feed. So here you have a treatment with crib feed, another treatment where they were only giving milk, supplemented milk, and another treatment that they were giving nothing. So and this intervention was from day 5 of life until day 21 of life, let's say. And here what you see, this is the average daily feed intake in dry matter, because the milk is liquid, so we convert in dry matter. So it seems that they drink quite a bit of, or they eat quite a bit of milk. Also the eaters, they like really the milk, and they were drinking more milk than eating the feed. And the body weight, this was a trial at day 21. Still, they could found that giving the milk, let's say, they could successfully increase the body weight of the animal. So as I mentioned, this strategy is probably to try to increase the body weight of the animals at weaning. So for the farmers that they want to sell piglets, this could be maybe a good strategy. Let's say the discussion part is what happened afterwards. Can we keep this higher body weight post-weaning, or at weaning, let's say, then what we have in best before weaning, we are losing it post-weaning because the animals are not good adapt to the solid diet, let's say. So here probably we need more work to try to connect pre-weaning and post-weaning. So if we summarize a bit the oral supplements, I think as I mentioned, focus is on these 12 hours of life. A lot of labor, and then the results will really be dependent on the management, on the mortality level that we have within these 12 hours of life. If we would go to this supplemental milk, the main focus is increase the body weight at weaning. And here probably we can do also some work in trying to understand what we want in this milk, if it's only milk, or we can already introduce some functional ingredients like plasma, but it could be probiotics, vitamins, to make a more complex product, to say, okay, it's not only that they get milk and energy, maybe also we can have a positive effect on the gut if we make a more complex ingredient, let's say. So now I will move to, I think, what would be one of the main challenges without zinc oxide is try to make sure that when the animals are weaned, they are able to eat something. So as you will see, it's really important that the animals pre-weaning, they are able to already start eating, because if not, we will wean animals that they will need 2 days, 3 days to start eating a solid diet. So it's really to help the animals pre-weaning to understand this is the feed, this is what you need to eat, and let's try to encourage them to eat. This is again our farm in Lelystad. So what you see, this is the age of the animals, and this is the creep feed consumption. And here you see that around 21 days is when is increasing really the consumption of creep feed. But again, you see the variation is much bigger than the consumption itself. So still we have a lot of work to do on how we can reduce this variation and how we can increase the, let's say, the consumption. And here on the other side, here what you see is the percentage of eaters. So you see that in most of the trials that we have done so far, the maximum percentage of eaters, we are 60, 70%. So that means that there's still 30-40% of the animals didn't eat anything. And that's, as I mentioned, it's really a big problem. If those 40% of animals that they didn't touch the feed before weaning will have a lot of problems post-weaning. So it's really, try to help them from and move from the 60 to try to go to 80 and hopefully 100%. Why is important, as I mentioned, because around weaning, we need to move from milk to feed. And as you see, the composition of milk is totally different compared to feed. And that means that the gut needs to adapt to the new diet, to the new nutrients. And especially you see that the main changes is that the fat, protein, lactose goes down, but especially in the feed, we introduce two new nutrients that are coming more from the starch and the fiber, non-starch polysaccharides. And for example, to be able to digest the starch, we need amylase activity in the gut. For the non-starch polysaccharides, we need fermentation. So that means that, if the animals before weaning, they didn't start to consume a diet, then the amylase activity, the fermentation capacity is really limited. So then we'll have really problems post-weaning to start digesting the diet. So we really need to force the animals pre-weaning to eat and try them to keep eating post-weaning. So for now, the main focus is what kind of diet do we want to give pre-weaning to start some to have some positive effects post-weaning. So we have done some work in trying to understand the composition, the ingredients, the nutrient level, and this is a trial of Australia, not done by Scotters. And here what they compare is three intervention pre-weaning. They were giving creep feed, post-weaning diet that they were already giving it pre-weaning, or the same diet that the sow was eating, also giving pre-weaning. And here what you see, this is the feed intake of the animals pre-weaning, and here you see that pre-weaning, all the animals with the creep feed, they were eating more, let's say, compared to the animals eating the weaner or the other diet. But what is interesting is that post-weaning, all the animals received the same diet that was the weaner diet. So only this group, the weaner diet group, received the same diet pre-weaning and post-weaning. And here what we see post-weaning, on average daily feed intake, is that the animals that before and after they were receiving this diet, they showed the highest feed intake post-weaning. And also, if you look to the growth, also was the highest growth post-weaning. So it looks like having the same diet before and after weaning is really helping the animals to keep a higher feed intake post-weaning. And now the next step would be, what type of diets do we want pre-weaning? Maybe we don't need too much nutrients. We need to focus on highly digestible ingredients. But now the focus will be, what can we do with this transition diet at weaning to try to prepare the gut pre-weaning and try to have the animals, that they can grow really fast post-weaning. So again, to go back a bit on where we are nowadays. So I said, okay, first focus on the sow, on the colostrum, try to get all the animals drinking or eating colostrum the first 24 hours. Don't start moving animals, let's say, before that time. Then, depending on the pre-weaning mortality, you could think of giving these oral supplements, especially the first 12 hours, to see if there's a positive effects. Then if the liters are really big and you don't want to move piglets from one liter to the other to standardize, supplemental milk can help you to increase probably the body weight at weaning. But I would say at a certain point, as we mentioned, the most important part is to start giving a solid diet with the starch, with the nutrients that the animals need to digest in order to prepare these animals post-weaning. So then, yeah, as I mentioned, you could continue with the crib feed afterwards, or you could introduce the pre-weaning diet, let's say the post-weaning diet pre-weaning. So with this, I go to the next part of the presentation. That would be what we have done post-weaning. So far the focus was pre-weaning. Now we go to the post-weaning. And post-weaning, in order to be successful, we took out zinc oxide, that's true, but also we reformulate quite a bit the diet. So when we were discussing over, we need to find a solution for zinc oxide, a lot of farmers were asking, hey, did you find a similar product than zinc oxide? But if possible, cheaper or the same price, but we don't need to change much. We take out zinc oxide, we include the new one, and we continue as it was because zinc oxide was good. And unfortunately, what we have seen is that if you take out zinc oxide and you don't reformulate this post-weaning diet, in a lot of farms, you will get problems. So similar what was mentioned before, that depending on the health status of the farm, probably you need different strategies on vaccination and treatment. The same had happened for the diets. We cannot produce one diet and give the same diet to all the farms. Depending on the farm health status, management, and this, we need to produce different diets. So that means, yeah, that the main nutrients, the protein, fiber, and other feed additive will play a role, but it's really important take out the zinc oxide and reformulate the diet to be successful. So we start with the protein. What we have seen is that when you have really mature animals, so in this table you see animals of 3.5 days, around 21 days old, up to 5 weeks, so a bit older, then this is the digestibility, and you see the milk is highly digestible already at 21 days old, and then increase a bit, but not that much. But you see especially the vegetable proteins that at the beginning they have a low digestibility and then increase. So that means that when you are using weaning animals with around 21 days, low body weight, you really need to choose raw materials, proteins that are higher in the protein level, but also the digestibility will be higher, and probably animal protein for these animals will be superior to the vegetable proteins, because we need sometimes we need to give some time to the animal to adapt to these vegetable proteins and be able to digest these vegetable proteins. So what has happened in Europe after the ban of zinc oxide? So before, with zinc oxide, most of the diets were close to 19-20%. Lysine was around 1.5%, so really high dense and concentrated diets. Now without zinc oxide, what we have seen is that the crude protein level, but also the lysine level of the diet went to let's say around 17%, 16% to really make safe diets. So when you make diets around 15, 60, 70%, the most important part is to have control on the amino acid profile, because if the amino acid profile is not balanced, then you will get problems of growth. But on the other hand, if you give too much protein, then you have seen already before that protein will be fermented by E. coli, and then you will get diarrhea. So in really farms with a poor health status, you really need to be close to 15. When the farms are good, you can go to more 17, 17 and a half. But let's say nowadays in Europe, we cannot find any more diets around 19%, 20% crude protein. This is too much protein and is of higher risk for E. coli diarrhea. Also, we have seen that the energy went down. So before with zinc oxide, we were having highly dense diet. Now we said, okay, the first diet post-weaning, we could include some fiber to dilute the diet to let the animals adapt to the new situation. And instead of pushing them with a lot of nutrients, give them time to adapt to the new situation. So we have some trials where we have a treatment that we call positive control. So this will be a high dense diet for most of the countries where you still have zinc oxide. Then a diet that we call negative control, that is more simple, cheap diet with less, let's say, amino acids, but also less additive. And then we were using this diet, negative control, and we were diluting this diet with what we call inert fiber. So we were adding 10% of fiber on top of this diet to dilute the diet and to let the animals to adapt with this fiber, the gastrointestinal tract. And here what you see for the first 2 weeks post-weaning, you see that when you dilute the diet, the feed intake goes up because the animals feel, hey, you have diluted the diet, I need to eat a bit more to catch up, to get the nutrients that I want. The efficiency is not bad. This is growth to feed, so it's the opposite to FCR. But what is important is that the fecal score, and the higher the better, was improved. So what we have seen now is that, without zinc oxide, most of the diets, the net energy, the kilocalories went down. Fiber is introduced in the diet, and mainly the fiber sources that we are using are fiber sources that are not really fermenting too much. So we are using oat hulls, for example, sunflower hulls, wheat straw, wheat bran, this type of fiber to adapt the diet, let's say, and then let the animals to eat more slow, let's say, and avoid this overeating of the animals. If we look to what has happened with the fat, we have done less research. There's some trials done with, for example, fish oil and omega-6, omega-3 ratios. But in this case, what we have done is to try to make the link between the US ratio. So this is unsaturated, saturated fatty acids of the diet, and the link to the digestibility. And here what you see is for young animals, piglets, and above for growing finishing pigs. And then what we say usually is that for a piglet diet, you need to have a US ratio in the feed between 3 and 4, so around 3.5. And then you see the fat digestibility is already quite high. When you have a diet with a really low US ratio, around 1.5, for example, then the fat digestibility of the diet is low. So then you maybe need to help the animals with emulsifiers or other solution to try to increase the fat digestibility. But by playing with the US ratio of the diet, you can already monitor the fat digestibility. So with this, I arrived to the end of my presentation. So I hope that it would be clear, and I really encourage the countries where there's still zinc oxide, that there's life without zinc oxide. To still be alive, you really need to start pre-weaning and continue post-weaning. The focus is to trying to help the animals to be prepared in the pre-weaning situation to have a successful post-weaning. So we really need to start focus on the pre-weaning situation. At weaning, we cannot change the diet, so keep the same diet before and after weaning. And post-weaning, as you have seen, you really need to reformulate the diets. Protein needs to go down, fiber needs to go up, acid binding capacity, acidifiers needs to come into the diets to have a good, really gut barrier. But I always say I'm a nutritionist, but the management in the farm is as important as the diet. So if the management is not good, if the stress is too much, or the health status of the farm is not good, unfortunately with the diet we will not solve too many problems. So with this, thanks again for being here and for your attention, and maybe we'll have time at the end to answer some questions, and if not, here you have my email, and you can send me emails, no problem. Thanks again, have a good day.
Thank you very much, Francesc. Wow, it's really, really interesting, and actually I've been checking on the questions. There are already posted a couple of questions, so hopefully we can have some time at the end for addressing this. I would just highlight, I like one of your last sentence, there is life without zinc oxide after the use of zinc oxide. So encourage everyone, like there is a possibility to keep doing the things pretty well. Okay, let's just, Victor finally cannot continue with the webinar. They have some connectivity problems. So I will just jump into the introducing the next speaker, which is Javier Polo. He is the Senior Vice President global for APC, for the R&D APC, but also is a technical advisor for the European Animal Protein Association. And what he's going to present us now, it's again linked with what Francesc was explaining, that is life without zinc oxide. So there is more alternative ingredients to zinc oxide. In this case, they are going to present experiences with plasma proteins and hydrolyzed peptides with this product, this Peptable. So, Javier, are you ready?
Thank you, Nacho, for the introduction. Thank you to all the attendants to this webinar, because I think that we are covering a very hot topic about what is the alternative to the zinc oxide from two perspectives, from the vaccination perspective and also from the nutritional perspective. I'm going to present some of these alternatives. Obviously, I'm going to talk about the plasma protein and hydrolyzed peptides, Peptiva, that can reduce the winning stress related with the new zinc oxide-free scenario that we have in the European Union. Well, if zinc oxide was so good, taking control of the E. coli and edema disease, what is the reason to ban the zinc oxide? Basically, the reason of banning zinc oxide has been related with the toxicity, with the toxic effect in case of too high or too prolonged administration, the pollution in the environment from zinc-rich manure application to the field. Also has been demonstrated that the pharmacological level of zinc oxide accelerate antibiotic-resistant genes spread, and also the increase of heavy metal was related with the tolerance gene spread. In addition of this, zinc oxide was correlated with modification of bacterial population composition and not always in the good direction. Then this is the reason why zinc oxide is not anymore at the pharmacological level, is not anymore available in the European Union. And what has been the impact of the zinc oxide ban in the gut health? Post-winning diarrhea, as already David and Nacho already mentioned, post-winning diarrhea and edema disease caused by E. coli is regaining industrial attention. The reduction of zinc oxide may increase the clinical risk of edema disease. Nacho and David already told about that. According with a survey that was published last year, more than 50% of the European Union farms have verotoxin gene positive animals, meaning that pigs are more susceptible to edema disease. Unfortunately, there is a lack, for the time being, there is a lack of zoonosis data at the European level. At least the European Union has not made any publication about what has been the effect of the ban of zinc oxide on E. coli. We have data, well, Nacho and David already provide some data about the situation of the edema disease in different farms at European and other areas of the world. I have this information from a congress, that was a Spanish congress last month, about what is the situation of E. coli and other pathogens in the Spanish nursery farms. As you can see, from 2021 to 2023 has been increased in the E. coli F18. Also has been increased, specifically, you can see that there is a big gap or increase in a higher percentage from 2022 to 2023. This probably is related to the lack of zinc oxide for E. coli F18 and for the cigatoxin 2E. That is the major known agent that causes the edema disease. Also, as David and Nacho already mentioned, Streptococcus suis is present in the Spanish farm, and we are assuming that this situation in the Spanish farm probably can mirror farms from other European Union commercial farms. Again, there is no official data on the effect of the European Union ban of the therapeutic zinc oxide. Talking with people from the field, they are considering that at least has been an increase in mortality around 3%. And everybody has an opinion about what is right or what is wrong to do from a nutritional point of view in the absence of zinc oxide, as already Frances mentioned in the previous speech. For example, the SEGES, the Danish Fish Research Center, was published just last year after the zinc oxide ban, the recommendation for the Danish farmer about the winning diet formulation. Basically, as you can see, they are recommending similar that what Frances is suggesting, reduce protein level in the diet, use supplemental amino acids. They are recommending to use benzoic acid, organic acid in general. And also they are recommending to use high quality proteins. And in the case of spray plasma, for the recommendation is for winning pigs with body weight below 7 kilos to have a plasma inclusion level around 5%. But what the industry will expect from the zinc oxide alternative? First of all, is what is the function? How this alternative works at the farm level. Also, if the alternative sustain or improve pig performance or the health compared with zinc oxide, what is the comparison? Also, if this alternative support intestinal digestive function or modulate the immune system. If it's self-stable or ineffective under variable feed processing condition. As you know, we have different ways to process in feed, and also there is a variable situation in the farms. Also about if the alternative can be compatible with other ingredients in the feed, and basically if this alternative has been supported by the scientific trials or scientific publications. As Frances said, one of the strategies is to reduce the protein diets and the level of the proteins in the winning diets. The advantage basically is there is no protein, undigested protein in the gut. Then the good thing of reducing the protein level is reduce the proteolytic bacteria population, reduce the pathogenic E. coli, and reduce pro-inflammatory cytokines related with no inflammation, because low protein means that the protein has been used by the good microbiota. Okay, what is the negative of low protein diets? Obviously, there is the peak performance. The animals performs, at least during the initial winning phase, worse than with a higher protein level. As Frances says, high fiber diets, basically the same advantage than reduce low protein diets. However, there is not too many publication comparing high fiber diets replacing zinc oxide, for example. Okay. And today I'm going to talk about the use of spray-dried plasma as alternative. Has been a lot of publication. There is more than 600 peer-reviewed papers about the use of plasma in different applications. It is a plenty of scientific information. And basically this information in the different applications, what is suggesting is that plasma improve the digestion, improve the nutrient digestibility and the growth performance, is able to improve the intestinal integrity. Also, is able to modulate the immune system, reduce the pro-inflammatory cytokines, basically reduce inflammation, and modulate the Treg cells. Also has been some studies that relate the use of plasma with reduced E. coli setting. This means antibacterial action, and at the intestinal morphology that I mentioned before, improve the intestinal integrity and reduce the increase of the superoxide dismutase. This means this is related with inflammation of the animals. Then there is a lot of information about the benefit of using plasma in in weaning, but not only in weaning, in different applications. This is a publication that was made just 2 years ago. Was a publication from the group of Balan. It's a meta-analysis reviewing 135 publications. You can see the performance. This is the performance over the controls. The performance in average daily gain and average daily feed intakes is significant during the first week. Then there is a reduction if you consider the period of 0.14, 0.21. But if you see all the nursery period, you can see that there is a clear improvement in performance using plasma, and this is probably related that the animals feeding with spider plasma have a good start, start to eat very fast from at weaning, and this is related with carryover effect during the nursery period. As you can see, the performance average daily gain means then these animals start to eat very fast at weaning. Also, there is a lot of studies where we challenge the pigs with different E. coli, with different E. coli strains, with F18, with K88, K99, and basically in all this publication, the impact of feeding plasma has been very consistent: improve average daily gain, reduce diarrhea, reduce mortality, reduce inflammation. This is very consistent in the data that we have and that has been published about the use of plasma in challenge with E. coli. This is a study that we presented last year at the Lehman Swine Conference. In this study, we were working with genetic, the PAC 800-1050, that is quite susceptible to edema disease, to E. coli. In this study, we were replacing soy protein isolate by 5% spiral plasma. The animals were negative for other disease. Basically, at day 7, we have a challenge with E. coli F18. And then we follow the animals for 14 days later. And the important point is we not allowed medical intervention in this study, including electrolyte. This means that we were expecting a very high mortality because this genetic is quite susceptible to E. coli F18. And in fact, we have a very high mortality. You can see here the mortality, the survival in the control group was only 33%. This means that was the mortality was really high. Even with plasma, the mortality was very high. Remember that we're not allowed medication, we're not allowed electrolyte, but with plasma, we improved the mortality by 62%. It's not only that we improve the survival by 62%, it's also that the animals that survive, obviously during the first week before the challenge, we have the typical 300-400 grams of improvement in body weight, but after the challenge, the improvement was 1.5 kilos heavier than control. Okay. And also we observed a reduction in the F18 fecal shedding, especially 2 days after the challenge. This means that this again confirm that the use of plasma in diet, especially when there is a challenge with E. coli, have a positive effect on performance and the health of the animals. This is a study that was conducted years ago by SEGES, by the Danish Pig Center. And in this study, they were comparing 5% plasma versus 2,500 ppm pharmacological level of zinc oxide or the mixture of both. As you can see, the performance was similar with plasma and zinc oxide, no difference at all, better than the control. And when we put both together, there was an additive effect. This means that probably the mode of action of plasma and zinc oxide are quite different. And this is the reason why we observe this additive effect when we put both together. Obviously, zinc oxide is allowed in different areas of the world, except European Union for the time being. This means that the addition of plasma to zinc oxide can be, because according with this study, have an additive effect. I'm going to present also another study. This study was conducted last year, 2022. In this study, we were not working with pharmacological level of zinc oxide, just the common levels in the diet, 150 ppm, because in this study, what we were looking was, okay, in absence of zinc oxide, what is the benefit of adding plasma in this diet? And then we put plasma just the first week of weaning. Basically, what we observe, this is the body weight, the curve of body weights between both treatments was significantly positive in favor of plasma, and the body weights at day 49 was statistically better. Basically, what we have is the normal 500 grams in improved body weight that usually we see when we are feeding plasma at the end of nursery. Remember that we only feeding in this study just the first week with plasma 5% inclusion level. What observed during the first week was a clear improvement in the average dairy gain and reduction in the feed to gain. The reduction was not statistically different, but numerically was very clear. The improvement in the average dairy gain was statistically different. And when we observe what happened at the end of nursery, we still have a better improvement, statistically significant for average dairy gain. This explains why we have a half kilo more body weight at the end of nursery, and the feed to gain was not statistically different, basically was the same. Okay. And finally, I'm going to present this study. This study was conducted by the Wageningen University with the group of Paul Bicker. In this study, I only put some of the treatment. There is more treatment in this study, but I only put the treatment with the absence of zinc oxide, 5% plasma during the first 2 weeks, or a consideration that we can have is adding plasma later on in phase 2 and phase 3, especially at the price of the actual pig meat in Europe. This maybe makes sense to consider to add plasma in late phase of the weaning period. Again, what we observed was during the first 14 days, plasma performs better than the control in both treatment. Obviously, at this period was only 5% for both periods, but at day 35 we have a linear effect of adding plasma. The more plasma you add, the better body weight you can have. And in fact, you have 1 kilo more of body weight at the end of day 35 with the strategy of adding a little more plasma in phase 2 than phase 3. Also, the average dairy gain was improved during the first 14 days, basically the same. The feed conversion rate was reduced during this period and plasma was present in the diet. But at day 35, again, the average dairy gain was significantly better with both treatments. It was a linear effect, and the feed conversion rate was similar, or was not statistically different, was numerically better. Then the strategy of adding plasma in phase 2 and phase 3 probably is not about the strategy actually in the European Union, because the lack of alternative, this can bring better performance at the end of the nursery. This is for feed mills that they cannot use plasma because they are producing ruminant feed. As you know, the European Union is not allowed to use animal proteins in ruminant feed. Then in Europe, for ruminant feed, it's not possible for the feed mills that are producing pig feed and ruminant feed. They can use spray 5% plasma, but they can use hydrolyzed proteins. Then we developed Peptiva. Peptiva is a hydrolyzed protein from plasma. And we conducted this study 2 years ago at the University of Illinois with Hans Einstein. Basically, we were comparing a controlled diet with soy protein concentrate versus a diet with 5% plasma versus a diet with 5.6% of Peptiva. The difference between 5 and 5.6 is related with the level of protein between plasma and Peptiva. As you can see here, the body weight was better, was basically 1 kilo more at day 42, similar than in previous trial. When we see the data from Wageningen 35 days, there was another 1 kilo more. Here is the same, 1 kilo more on body weight at the end of nursery. The improvement in average daily gain was observed when the product was in the diets, statistically better. And the gain to feed, remember this is gain to feed, the higher the better. The use of plasma and Peptiva both performs better than the control. Then Peptiva can be an alternative for the feed mill that cannot use spider plasma because they are producing ruminant feed. Then, as conclusion, the zinc oxide at pharmaceutical level have multifactorial and multi-target actions, but has been banned. The alternative required a combination of several strategies and tools to complement their different modes of action and target synergistically, as Frances already mentioned. Low protein diets, high fiber content, use of organic acid, essential oil, and functional proteins like spider plasma or Peptiva should be part of this solution. And with that, thank you everyone for attending this webinar.
Okay, Javier, thank you very much. It's a really interesting presentation, especially for those ones which are not that related with the nutritional and plasma. The results were really amazing. Well, I have good news. Victor is not back, but we will still have some time for some questions that has been dropped in the question panel. So now it's time to move for the last part of the webinar, which is the conclusions and closure. Well, here we are, the four of us. Good to see you all again. Remember to switch on your micros because there are some interesting questions that I would like to be addressing to all of you, okay? If you don't mind, let's start with the first one, which I think should be addressed to David, could be linked with David and my presentation, but let's David to give us here overview. They ask us, please talk more about the cases with Salmonella cholera suis. I'm having severe septicemias in nursery and I would like knowing how to get rid of it. Thank you. David, you are traveling around Europe. I know Salmonella is still it's a hot topic.
Yeah, Salmonella is always a topic. Thanks God, not in every farm, but it's there. Typhimurium especially, but from time to time, cholera suis, it's present and it's really affecting the pigs with high mortality. I totally agree with you. And it's needed a good control. And I think controlling Salmonella, there are different strategies. And one is then, of course, can always be medication and feed formulation, and vaccination, of course. But before anything, I always say, have you checked also for the presence of edema disease? Because in those farms which is positive, you should consider the impact of that, because what we are very much convinced today, that before we were not paying attention, I already mentioned, I'm just repeating, if there is the intestinal integrity is damaged, we are facilitating the two things, the growth, thanks there is more oxygen available of the bacteria, but also the septicemia, because of the damage. And I think this damage, now today we are talking about edema, but I wonder probably will be quite the same with Lawsonia, which is also damaging. So anything which is damaging gut integrity, we should consider as part of the strategy in controlling cholera suis. That is the first thing. So check for that. Then if you are positive, I think it's worth. If you have really subclinical or clinical edema, probably is going to help a bit or a lot. This depends on the farms. Particularly, I was involved in a very severe case in nursery with high mortalities, 20, 25%, 30%, depending on the batches. And in that, it was positive to edema. We introduced vaccine. It really helps. This farm already had introduced a vaccine in South for Salmonella cholera suis. which is also a very good thing as a strategy to provide good colostrum antibodies to block this early colonization coming mainly probably from the south, you know. So both the strategies, controlling is not an easy topic to talk, and it has to be addressed, I guess, from different angles, not just vaccinated with edema and Salmonella cholerae is gone, no. But we may facilitate a faster control like we have seen with other diseases like post-weaning diarrhea, streptococcus, and cholera suis as well. I don't know if I'm answering the question.
Yes, well, I was thinking in a similar approach. So yeah, I think again, this concept of the holistic approach is still over the table, and especially in cases of cholera suis, well, we need to also take into account other pathogens. Okay, let's move to another question that I think can be addressed for both Francesc and Javier. What is better, to feed a pre-weaning crib and continue feeding for a few days post-weaning, or feed a post-weaning diet before weaning and continue same diet after weaning? Francesc, I think this is that one for you, but also I would like to include in those cases, Javier, when plasma can get the most of the nutrition. These are the two questions.
Go ahead, Francesc.
Yeah, if we start with what is the right, I think it would depend basically on the body weight or the age at weaning. So in case you are weaning at 21 days, still the animals are quite immature and this, so then probably it's better to use the crib feed and prolong post-weaning, because usually the crib feed diets are more dense in nutrients and more highly digestible. On the other side, if you are weaning, in our case that we are weaning at 30 days old, animals of 8.5 kilos, we use the post-weaning diet. We use it already pre-weaning, and yeah, basically the main motivation is cost. Usually the post-weaning diet is cheaper than the crib feed. And then if the animals can use a simple diet because they are bigger, yeah, then better for the cost to go to a simple diet. So I would say depending on the body weight, both options are good.
Okay. Javier, you want to add something?
No, I will agree 100% with Francesc. He's right. We have experienced adding plasma in crib feeding or obviously in post-weaning diet. And as he said, depending of the weaning time, if the weaning time is 21 days, then the crib feeding strategy probably is the right. Plasma is very common to use in crib feeding diet because it's very digestible. And when you are weaning at 28, 30 days, then makes more sense to use the post-weaning diet just 1 week before the weaning. I fully agree with that.
Okay. I will just answer quite easy. There was one question I think is related with one of my trials when I was, is addressed by Michael Putt, where all these groups vaccinated at 2 days of age or later. I think this question is related with the trial I showed, comparing the two groups, the non-vaccinated, vaccinated with VPUR, and the live oral E. coli vaccine. So for VPUR, yes, it was vaccinated, those animals at 2 days of life. The oral E. coli live vaccine was applied at weaning. Okay, you know, this vaccine, I think, is licensed to be applied somewhere on the weaning. And in this study, all those animals, they were, let's say, orally vaccinated at the time of the weaning. And then the last question, which is also for HIPRA staff, so David and myself, to assess the awareness on the field, is there an increase in demand in preventive detection? Well, I will just also just go through this answer, because I think David already explained quite well. Of course, we have also our diagnostic service, this VeroCheck, for the detection of the gene that codifies for the verotoxin, which of course is going to give us a picture in that time, in the moment that we are doing the diagnostic. But as soon as we are using, as David has said, this diagnostic more in a kind of monitoring throughout the time, Well, of course, it is not giving us early detection or a preventive treatment, but of course it can give us an idea when the problems can start to appear, and it will allow us also to implement the different measures that we have seen, both for the immunity or also on the nutrition. David, I don't know if you want to add something else here.
No, I think it's clear. It's like that. So, yeah.
It's all about the diagnostic in that case. Okay, so with this, I see there is another question related with the presentations, and if this session will be recorded, we will directly address to those persons. Unfortunately, Victor cannot be here to thank you all for being here, to thank you also all the speakers for this time and the preparation of the presentations. So I will just, well, thank you everyone for being here. Wherever you are connected from the world, we know that there is still a lot of people which is connected. If you want to contact some of the speakers, please just feel free to at any time contact us, so we can just address questions or give you the contact details of the speakers. I'm wishing you all the best for the rest of the day and the rest of the week. Thank you very much for being here, and at APC and HIPRA, we are here to help you improve your businesses. Thank you very much.